Hey Bookfighters, it's Wednesday and it is YA month and it's a lovely day, so I'm filming outside. So this week I read Finnikin of the Rock by Melina Marchetta and I'm going to talk about that. I'm also going to talk about some of the other books this author has written and also the concept of the YA genre. In Australia, Melina Marchetta is a pretty well-known author, not because she's written a ton of popular books, but she did write one outrageously popular book called Looking for Ella Brandy. Looking for Ella Brandy was published about 20 years ago, and since then it's been on the list for high school English students to study, and for good reason. It's a brilliantly written coming-of-age story about a girl in her last year of high school, and it covers so many important issues that young people are confronted with. There's a full season of Degrassi episodes worth of issues dealt with in this book. There's racism, family pressure, family relationships, depression, loss, heartbreak, scandal, betrayal, identity crisis, and probably more. I haven't read it since I was forced to read it in Year 9. It's also what I would call purely YA, which is a term that I made up in the comments of a response video that The Missing N made, in which he talks about calling YA fiction a genre, and you should definitely watch that. I'll put a link in the description. Basically what I'm referring to is a book written for young adults that you can't really label with any other genre. Looking for Ella Brandy is a book about young adults, written for young adults, and it's about issues that young adults deal with in their young adulthood. There's no fantastic setting. It's set in the era it was written in. There's a romance, but it's a part of the plot, not the entire plot, and the main character isn't a detective or a spy. It's just young adult. You couldn't call it anything else. I really liked Looking for Ella Brandy, and I think if I hadn't been forced to reread it and overanalyze it to the point of torture when I was 14, I would still like it. And that brings me to Finnikin of the Rock. This book was introduced to me a couple of years ago when a friend recommended it to me, and I was hesitant because this is a fantasy book, and for some reason I'm always a bit hesitant when authors jump genre. But then last week I was walking through Dynamics. Excuse me, I just have to do a celebratory happy dance for there finally being a bookshop in my city since Borders closed last year. So I was walking through Dymocks, and I was actually really close to picking up the Hugo Cabret book that Dan read, but then I saw this and it was like half the price, so I thought, what the hell? And it turns out I really liked this book for a lot of the same reasons that I liked Looking for Ella Brandy, and I just realised that Looking for Ella Brandy sounds a lot like Looking for Alaska, and I can't believe I didn't notice that until now. Aussies did it first, just saying. Anyway, the point I'm trying to make is this is a fantasy novel, but it's also a YA novel, and just because one book is set in an Australian high school and the other is set in a made-up land called Skoldenor doesn't mean that they're not drawing from the same basic human issues. Setting is just a very minor part of what makes a book, I think, and I could turn this into a super long rant about how there are no different genres, just different stories, and it would fit really well into what Katie and Dan were saying about complex issues in children's books, but it would go forever, so I'm going to leave that for another video and finish here. Next week I'm either going to be reading the sequel to Finnikin of the Rock or The Invention of Hugo Cabret, depending on my bank account, and you will see me then. And Katie, I will see you tomorrow.